III was so angry at the Americans' concept of liberty and freedom. This is before the Revolution. He was so upset because there were sermons being delivered among the colonies, and the sermons, which you can read today, the sermons preached liberty and freedom, and that true worship is to worship Jesus Christ as Lord and King. And John Hancock and John Adams read that and said, hey, that's pretty cool. And they were famous for walking around saying, and they even put up banners that stated, we serve no king but King Jesus. And that got to London, England, and it didn't go over well. And so King George III issued a decree, listed 7 names of those that are either ministers of the gospel in the colonies or instigators, 7 names. At the top of the list was a guy by the name of Samuel Adams, graduate from Harvard College. Actually, I don't even think he graduated. He was studying to be a pastor, and his dad told him, after he heard his first sermon, his dad said, you need to find another career. Sam Adams. John Adams said of Sam, poor Sam, he was born a rebel. Sam Adams understood the concept of liberty and freedom. He had a biblical grip of liberty and freedom that was brought to him by the knowledge of Jesus Christ. And the next guy was John Hancock. Outspoken, endorsing faith in God. The king said, if you find those 2 guys anywhere without trial, he said, I'm suspending the British Constitution for these 2 guys. You find them, you either hang them where they stand, or you ship them back to England and we'll hang them here in London. And then the other 5 guys on that list of 7 that were promised no trial and instant hanging, all 5 of them were pastors of the Black Robe Regiment. You say, what's the Black Robe Regiment? Well, that's what King George called them. The Black Robe Regiment. You say, what does that mean? King George said, those preachers in the pulpits of colonial America, they're so responsible for what's happening that they are their own regiment. They're their own army. And they do not have clergy protection. With what they're preaching, we got to take them out. And what was it they were preaching? Liberty and freedom. Listen to this. The Black Robed Regiment was the name that the British placed on the courageous and patriotic American clergy during the founding era, a backhanded reference to the black robes that they wore. Significantly, the British blamed the Black Robe Regiment for American independence. What an honor. And rightfully so. For modern historians have documented that, quote, there is not a right asserted in the Declaration of Independence that had not been first discussed by the New England clergy before 1763. It is strange to today's generations to think that the rights listed in the Declaration of Independence was nothing more than a listing of sermon topics that had been preached from the pulpit in the 2 decades leading up to the American Revolution, but such was the case. Yeah, you can say, wow, you can do that. Listen to this. Listen to what Tom Jefferson wrote. Quote, pulpit oratory ran like a shock of electricity through the whole colony of Virginia. John Adams said, and I quote, the Philadelphia ministers thunder and lightning every Sunday against that's King George's despotism. What a statement. According to the historian B.F. Morris, he writes, the minister of the revolution were, like their Puritan predecessors, bold and fearless in the cause of their country. No class of men contributed more to carry forward, listen, the revolution and to achieve our independence than did the ministers. Their prayers, patriotic sermons, and services, they rendered the highest assistance to the civil government, the army, and the country, said Morris. That's an awesome, awesome statement. So what are we to do as Christians?
KALO TV is brought to you by the grace of God and people like you. Thank you so much for your support and your prayers.